as you can. The session is focusing on convening, and it is designed as a conversation. And for a conversation, you need to know who you're talking to. My name is David Nabarro, and it's my honor to have been associated with the Food Systems Summit process since the beginning, and now to be working with my colleagues in support of the hub. This conversation is going to focus on empowering conveners and convening teams right through to 2025. And we're going to do it with short interventions, and we're going to do it by building the conversation on top of what each other says. We've done it before, and we know we can do it. So it's like picking up from previous discussions. But to help us on our way, the leader of the session, Silvia Lopez-Ekra, who is the Deputy Director of the Food Systems Coordination Hub, she's going to give us an introduction, and then after she's done that, I will invite our panelists to help us on our way. It'll be an extraordinary session. Thank you all for coming. Silvia, you have the floor.
Good morning, everybody. It is my singular honor to welcome you all very warmly to this leadership dialogue on empowering national conveners towards 2025. We all know that we are 2 months and less than 2 months away from the SDGs Summit, and we also all know that the world is not on track to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Yet, we also know that food systems transformation hold incredible power to rescue this agenda. And you, as national conveners, are at the front lines of making this happen for people, for planet, for shared prosperity, and leaving no one behind. So that is a very tall agenda, isn't it? And most of you, when you were nominated in 2020 to prepare your countries to come to the summit, to organize dialogues, and there were more than 600 dialogues organized at the country level by national conveners, to then develop pathways and make sure that your countries would come with very bold and ambitious commitments at the summit, didn't know how the journey would unfold. Post-summit, you have continued to press forward to mobilize the troops and to organize the efforts in your respective countries to operationalize your national pathways for them to be implemented in a systems way. And we know that this is not easy. And we know it has not been easy. First of all, because the context has been extremely challenging. We have been in the middle of a perfect storm, with poverty being on the rise, with hunger being on the rise, with the number of people unable to afford a healthy diet being on the rise. We have interlinked crises that are fueling each other, the COVID-19 pandemic, the cost of living crisis, the triple planetary crisis, and I could cite many other crises. And many countries in this room are experiencing very tight fiscal space. Some of them are even going into debt distress, which is making it extremely difficult to implement the change that we want to see. However, it has not been all gloom and doom, and the UNFSS+2 has given us a lot of hope. Hope because we are seeing the change happening. Change has started. Even in ways that we didn't expect. The seeds that we have planted 2 years ago have started to bloom. So much has been achieved to push the national pathways forward and to close the implementation gap, and unfortunately, I don't have enough time to talk about all the progress that has been achieved in countries. But I would really like to encourage you all to go to our website and to read the report of the Secretary General on the country progress, because you are going to discover the wealth of initiatives and achievements that we have been able to observe in all the countries. And this change can be credited in many ways to all of you in this work and in this room, and to your hard work. So today, on behalf of the Hub, on behalf of Stefanos, who unfortunately cannot be here because he has to be in another session, on behalf of David, Florence, and all of us who value this network so deeply, I would like to acknowledge and pay tribute to the incredible work that you are doing in your countries. And we applaud this work because we know it is difficult. We know that you are operating very often in complex, complicated contexts with limited resources, technical and financial. You have to navigate across sectors. You have to navigate the politics. You have to engage with stakeholders at multiple levels, and you have to break the silos every day. But today we are a strong network of 155 national conveners. We have 126 increasingly robust national pathways. We have received, and we were absolutely delighted at the Hub to receive 107 voluntary progress reports from countries, from the Global South and the Global North, which is really showing the universality of this agenda. And even some countries that have not adopted pathways or have not nominated national conveners have submitted progress reports, which is showing this common commitment to remain accountable and to walk the talk. We have spent 3 days together, and the echoes that we are receiving are overwhelmingly positive, that this was useful to you. But what next? What happens the day after? What happens after we take the planes back to our countries and we go back to our desks? And this is why we wanted to organize this session. It is a forward-looking session to plan ahead, to discuss what you will need from tomorrow onwards until 2025, to maintain the momentum, to convince sectors to align, to engage better with stakeholders, including with the youth, to cost your pathways, and to develop solid pipelines of bankable projects for investment, to engage with your parliamentarians, to mobilize the subnational level and to empower your consumers, and above all, to make sure that you can fully be system leaders, pioneering systems change. Important questions. How will you get involved in your national preparations for the SDG Summit in September in New York? How will you get in touch with your country teams for COP28 in Abu Dhabi? How will you strategize to get the most out of the Nutrition for Growth conference in Paris in 2024? And there are many other milestones that I could cite, and I see that David is already here on my side. So let me close by saying that we are organizing this session to hold space for you all to celebrate the success, but also to plan, share ideas, inspire each other so that we can go further and faster, because there is no time. And again, this is difficult work. It is often a labor of love, but the beauty of it all is that you are at the center of delivering a better life and a better future for people and planet, and that is a wonderful place to be. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we're having the conversation that Sylvia has asked us to have, and she's given us a beautiful initiation there. Now, our fire starters for this conversation are the panelists that you see seated on the podium, and then we will invite all the conveners and convening teams to take part, and others. Obviously, it's tricky because of timing, so I'm inviting the panelists to initiate with 3 minutes of their own observations on convening and what it means and what they've managed to achieve. And I'm also telling them that I will invite them to come back again for future interactions once we've heard from conveners, most of whom are sitting in the front of the room. So could I go first to His Excellency Andrés Suarez, who is Vice Minister in Ecuador, and invite him to lead us in. And André, you speak in Spanish, I think. You're Vice Minister of Rural Development at the Ministry of Agriculture. Please start now, sir.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días con todos. Un cordial saludo de parte del Ecuador. Un honor pues compartir este panel. Muchísimas gracias por la invitación. Quiero centrar mi corta intervención en 3 puntos importantes. El primero es un resultado muy concreto que hemos conseguido como país. El segundo, resaltar cuáles son las prioridades que tenemos en la transformación de los sistemas alimentarios. Y luego compartir cuáles son los desafíos que hemos identificado mientras elaboramos nuestra hoja de ruta. Como ustedes saben, el Ecuador presentó su hoja de ruta en febrero de este año. La verdad es que fue un ejercicio muy enriquecedor. Tratamos de que contemos con la participación no solamente del Ministerio de Agricultura, que es el ente que tiene la capacidad para emitir la política pública agropecuaria, sino que necesitamos la intervención de todos los actores de la cadena. En ese sentido, invitamos en la construcción de la hoja de ruta a los gobiernos autónomos descentralizados, los gobiernos locales. Invitamos también, por supuesto, a la academia para que forme parte en la construcción de nuestra hoja de ruta. Y lo más importante, invitamos a más de 150 asociaciones de productores. Con ellos construimos nuestra hoja de ruta para la transformación de los sistemas agroalimentarios. Es importante destacar que en esta hoja de ruta se le ha dado un papel importante a la mujer rural. En el Ecuador, la agricultura en el Ecuador es una moneda de 2 caras. Por un lado tenemos al sector agroexportador, que es importantísimo porque genera mucho trabajo y genera divisas en un país dolarizado. La otra cara de la moneda, sin embargo, es la agricultura familiar y campesina, que es la base de la pirámide de la agricultura en el Ecuador. Producen más del 60% de los alimentos que consumimos los ecuatorianos. Y dentro de la agricultura familiar y campesina, en esta construcción de la hoja de ruta, identificamos el gran papel que cumple la mujer rural. Y en ese sentido hemos querido empoderarla, visibilizarla, que es lo más importante. Estamos elaborando un registro de la agricultura familiar y campesina, donde podamos tener una estadística clara con respecto a cuál es el papel de la mujer. Más del 70% de la producción agrícola, de agricultura familiar lo lidera la mujer. En ese sentido es importante crear planes y proyectos específicos para la mujer. Creamos un crédito dirigido a la mujer rural, que se llama Super Mujer Rural, que es bastante innovador debido a que es el único crédito en el Ecuador que no requiere la firma del cónyuge para endeudarse, lo cual en nuestra cultura es bastante complicado, ¿no? Entonces es importante eso, la visibilización de la mujer, el empoderamiento de la mujer rural. Con respecto a los desafíos, es importante fortalecer la asociatividad. La agricultura en el Ecuador, la base de la pirámide, y como les comentaba, son unidades productivas agropecuarias muy pequeñas. Y sin una asociatividad real, es muy complicado que ellos puedan competir y puedan, primero, comprar los insumos que requieren pues, para producir mejor, pero luego también para salir al mercado es importante que se asocien y puedan ser más competitivos, ¿no? Tenemos en el Ministerio de Agricultura una subsecretaría que solamente trabaja para fortalecer y crear políticas públicas enfocadas en la agricultura familiar. Con respecto a los desafíos que hemos encontrado, hay varios que me gustaría pues, ponerlos en consideración de todos los presentes. El que más me preocupa realmente, y creo que es algo que sucede mucho en nuestra región, no solamente en el Ecuador, es el envejecimiento de la población en el campo. Cómo vamos viendo que los jóvenes se están mudando a las ciudades y el campo cada vez se está quedando sin agricultores. Nosotros estamos convocados aquí para fortalecer a los sistemas alimentarios y es importante no olvidar el eje de la agricultura, que son los agricultores y nuestros productores, ¿no? Entonces, si nos quedamos sin gente en el campo, realmente vamos a tener un problema quizás a mediano o largo plazo. En el Ecuador la edad promedio de cada agricultor es de 60 años, 55, 60 años, y la curva va ascendiendo. Entonces creo que es algo que tenemos que conversar, tenemos que generar políticas públicas a efectos de que los jóvenes se puedan quedar en el campo. Y bueno, otro desafío que podemos encontrar a mediano plazo para el cumplimiento de nuestras metas, sin duda, es los fenómenos naturales. Se nos avecina un fenómeno del Niño, probablemente nos golpee muy fuerte, así que tenemos que estar preparados. Para concluir, creo que es importante destacar el valor de la mujer en la agricultura en el Ecuador, y estoy seguro que será igual en otros países de la región. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much indeed. And the wonderful thing about the story from Ecuador is that there have been quite a lot of changes at the political level, and Andrés became responsible quite recently, but the pathway has actually been there and has held things in a good place. And we really appreciate the leadership that Andrés has shown and this focus that you heard on the place of rural women in the food system. Thank you again, sir. Mary Mpere is Acting Director in the Development Policy and Planning Division in the National Development Planning Commission in Ghana. She's also the Sun Technical Focal Point. And as we take our panel forward, I would love to hear from the panelists, build on what Andrés described. What are the lessons that you've learned from the past, Mary, that help you when you're thinking about the next 2 years of moving forward on food systems transformation? Thank you, Mary.
Thank you very much. For us in Ghana, we built on what we have done as far as the scaling up nutrition movement was concerned. Because we were involved in that, we already had networks on the ground that we could work with, like academia, CSOs, the development partners. So it was a little easy for us to develop our pathways, which we have integrated into our planning system. I think one of the issues that we need to keep in mind is that the pathways must necessarily be a living document. If you look at the time that we were given to come up with the pathways, it was not possible for us, for instance, to be able to identify every issue that we had to deal with. You will have emerging issues, for instance, the cost of living crisis, food prices shooting up. Those were things that were not happening when we developed the pathways. We had to necessarily take those up. And so there are challenges. The challenges that we have encountered, some are financing, and that is actually an old one, because from even the SUN work, the scaling up nutrition work that we did, it was very obvious that partners are not very comfortable funding things like coordination, for instance. And yet coordination is what holds everything together. Without coordination, things fall apart. There is no way that you are going to have any traction at all. Government is constrained. We are in debt distress. We will not hide that. And even with that, we still have budget lines. One thing I also see is that when we integrated it into our medium-term development policy framework, we had a diagnostic study that gave us indicators that we ought to track to ensure that we are following the progress. But unfortunately, not all the indicators could be tracked because we simply did not have the data to track some of them. So going forward, data is something that we need to keep an eye on. Also from the SUN movement, the whole ethos of the SUN movement was to scale up proven interventions. And unfortunately for us, even with the food systems work, it's a little here, a little there, low-hanging fruits, pilots here and there. But how can you have serious transformation with pilots? So I guess that just as we did with the SUN movement, the lesson should be scale up what works. And we also have to look at the financing architecture. If you have to come up with one-year programs, when transformation obviously takes time. we should be looking at medium to long-term financing strategies that will help us to really move the needle if we are serious about transformation. I think those are the points that I remembered for now. Thank you.
What's exciting when I listen to Mary is that she's brought the experience from being in the scale-up nutrition movement into her work on food systems and has really convened in an extraordinary way in a very, very difficult context. Let's move to another country where there's been extraordinary progress as well. It's with great pleasure that we introduce Professor Ramesh Chand. He's a member of the National Institution for Transforming India, or NITI Aayog, which replaced the National Planning Commission and has become an apex body. Professor Chand has ministerial rank, and it's a real honor to receive you with us as the convener of India.
So David has not set any agenda for me. I can do free and frank talk. In fact, once I accepted the responsibility of working as national convener, I just thought how to market this idea of food system transformation in the country. The approach which I used is that SDG goals have been accepted by all the countries. So I started writing about farming system like this, that transformation of food system is critical to achievement of SDG goals, because 11 SDG goals are directly linked to what we do in agri-food sectors. So there are this strong linkage. Because of this lot of awareness about SDG, the acceptability of idea of food system transformation became quick and handy. Then I read a lot of literature at UN site, FAO site, to understand what food system transformation involves. What I observed from that is that while the challenges and goals for food system transformation are almost similar for all the countries, but the way we move in that direction, that is different. Every country has its own specificities, its own institution type. Some country, 90% marginal farmers, some country, large farm size. So specificities are well known. So then I realized that we need to prepare some sort of master plan which is specific to the country, which is not in generic term, but which specifically draw a kind of road ahead, pathways, whatever name you give to it, but I felt that there was need for it. Then we organized a stakeholder consultation, and based on that, we prepared a document, and I call that as a reference book for food system transformation. So that if somebody says, what does this food system transformation means? Does it mean bringing back the indigenous production system? Does it mean abandoning use of chemical and going for bio inputs? So just to clarify those kind of things, we prepared a document with the help of UN-based agencies in India, and it is published by Springer on this food system transformation. Then in this, we just identified what is role of institution, role of governance, role of technology, and all those factors which matter for food system transformation. The third message which I want to share based on my experience is that promoting food system in the country needs some champion or champions. Unless you have a committed person in the country who is convinced about this approach, that in our general development strategy, we don't have to go for the conventional agriculture development strategy. We need to have a different type of approach. So you need a person who has that conviction and who enjoys the reputation in the country. As a expert, as a person holding objective view, and who also have some influence in decision making, in policy, in the government, and in the public domain. Then third is I feel that writing in media, talking about this in TV debates, that why we need to change our approach from the conventional approach to system approach, why it is important today not only to increase food production, but also look at efficiency, also look at what is happening to nutrition, because today we are passing through a phase when per capita food production is rising in most of the country, but hunger is reappearing, undernutrition is growing. So to look at this contradiction, so we need this fresh approach and sensitization of public to generate good debate, to relook into these reasons and to reimagine our agriculture. The fourth step, which I would like to suggest based on my experience, is that gradually built into policy what is needed for food system transformation. This is what we have done in India. Last 3 budget, if you see, that some element of food system, one by one is picked. It is not knee-jerk reaction that suddenly you move from one kind of thing to another kind of things, especially in a democratic country like mine, that gradually you just introduce that change in the policies. Once this thing got established, which I have done that work recently, that putting quantitative dimension to food system, like we have for SDG, want to reduce hunger to 0, want to do this elsewhere. So again, I came out with a document that in next 25 years, in quantitative term, what we should be doing. How much area we can bring under natural farming without posing any serious threat to food security. Similarly, where we can go for millets, where we cannot go for millets. So putting those kind of things in more specific and quantified way. And the last point I want to make is that since individual ministries and departments follow their own mandate and agenda, we need a mechanism or institution for coordination, because food system approach is a system. It involves nutrition, it involves sustainability, involves adaptation to climate change, and so many other things. Therefore, role of coordinating agency or coordinating mechanism is very, very important. So I stop here. Thank you, David.
And that, everybody, was a masterclass. The importance of starting with the SDGs, developing a pathway, engaging institutions, finding the champions, doing the work in the media, and explaining the contradictions and saying we need help to understand these, and then the coordination across the ministries. A huge job. Thank you for sharing it. Now we hear from Reem Ghazi Al-Fulaish, Chairperson of the Board of Directors and herself Acting Director General of the Public Authority for Food and Nutrition in Kuwait. Lessons from the past to guide us towards the future. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, and please allow me to speak in Arabic.
Yes, of course.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. كوني الناشونال كونفينر لدولة الكويت، واجهت مثل ما واجه أغلبكم كيفية البدء في القيام بالحوارات الوطنية للنظم الغذائية. طبيعي كان الأساس إن احنا نجتمع كجهات حكومية، قطاع خاص، مجتمع المدني، كذلك الأكاديمية وطلبة المدارس. حرصنا في دولة الكويت على إشراك طلبة المدارس في هذه الحوارات التي قمنا بها في عام 21. قمنا ب3 حوارات، خرجت التوصيات وتبين لنا أن المشاركة في صنع القرار والخروج بتوصيات أمر جداً هام لدولة مثل دولة الكويت تعتمد اعتماد كبير على استيراد الغذاء لتحقيق أمنها الغذائي. فأصبح من اللازم العمل الجاد لتقوية النظم الغذائية في دولة الكويت. خرجت الكثير من التوصيات، أحب أن أشارككم في بعضها. أحدها تعزيز تغذية طلبة المدارس في دولة الكويت. يؤسفني القول أن دولة الكويت تعاني من ارتفاع نسب الأطفال المصابين بداء السكري، وهذا يتطلب العمل الجاد في تعزيز تغذية الأطفال وطلبة المدارس منذ الأعوام الصغيرة. لذلك اجتمعنا واستطعنا أن ننشئ اللجنة الوطنية العليا لتعزيز تغذية طلبة المدارس برئاسة الهيئة العامة للغذاء والتغذية ومشاركة وزارة التربية ووزارة الصحة، ومن الطبيعي مشاركة القطاع الخاص. تهدف هذه اللجنة إلى وضع الضوابط التي تقرر الأغذية المسموح بتداولها داخل المدارس حسب الفئات العمرية، وقيام المفتشين في الهيئة العامة للغذاء والتغذية بإجراء التفتيش المستمر على هذه المنشآت التي توفر الأغذية لطلبة المدارس، وتحديد ما هي الأغذية المسموح بتداولها داخل هذه المدارس. طبعاً ما كان الأمر بالبساطة اللي أتحدث بها، واجهتنا بعض التحديات، ولكن نفخر بالقول أننا استطعنا وسنستمر في الاستمرار في هذا النهج لرصد المؤشرات التي نأمل بتحقيقها من إنشاء مثل هذه اللجنة. الأمر الآخر وهو ما تحدث به زميلي الدكتور راميش، عدم وجود كيان يربط ما بين الجهات المعنية بتعزيز النظم الغذائية في الدولة. لذلك استطعنا ولله الحمد في دولة الكويت من إنشاء كيان عالي المستوى، وهو لجنة دائمة من لجان مجلس الوزراء الموقر، يضم في عضويته الجهات ذات العلاقة بالنظم الغذائية والأمن الغذائي. وهذه اللجنة حالياً فعالة ونفخر بوجودها، وهي موكل إليها التنسيق ما بين جهات الدولة المختلفة، سواء الجهات الحكومية، القطاع الخاص، المجتمع المدني، للتنسيق ما بين جميع هذه الجهات لتعزيز النظم الغذائية والأمن الغذائي. التحديات كثيرة ونشاطركم التحديات التي تواجهونها، لكن نحن اليوم موجودين لتبادل الخبرات، ونفخر أن احنا نكون موجودين مع National Convenors وكذلك المهتمين بتعزيز النظم الغذائية. شكراً.
Please, everybody, really remember listening to Reem today. Reem had to fight hard to get progress, but she's succeeded because she convinced others of the importance of having a different path. And it came out of her work really with young people. And so the dialogues that started this off involved young people. It required cooperation of the health people, the health officials, because it's important that this very high incidence of diabetes among young people in Kuwait was taken on board at the highest level and used to influence the way in which the food system works. And then finally, to create a coordination mechanism that became permanent is a real achievement as well. Sometimes when I think about this work and I think about bravery, Reem Al-Falaish comes to mind. Thank you again. Now, every one of you has experiences. Please, those of you who've been doing it, just think what resonates, because that's where we build in the coming minutes. And to help us, we've asked Alvin Kopse, who's Head of International Affairs and Food Security of the Federal Office for Agriculture in Switzerland. They, too, have had some interesting and often quite challenging aspects to their journey. Alvin, give us the lessons, please.
Thank you very much, David. Indeed, I think being a national convener has certainly been a very interesting and fascinating learning journey. It offered opportunities, and we have also encountered some challenges. So let me give you two opportunities and talk about one challenge later. I start maybe with the preparation for the Food Systems Summit itself. The call of the UN to organize dialogues came at the time in Switzerland where there was quite a bit of disagreement what direction agriculture policy in Switzerland should be taking. Parliament had just suspended a discussion on a agriculture policy reform. That's a thing that almost never happens. And they mandated the executive branch to come forward with a vision for agriculture policy. So the pre-summit preparation process actually offered this wonderful opportunity to bring together farmers, private sector, civil society, science, and to start building a common understanding around food systems transformation. And I think that's important because the broadening of the discussion away from agriculture production only towards a food systems transformation broadened also the base for possible a compromise. So that was one opportunity. Another opportunity was that we organized dialogues with cities. The federal agriculture policy doesn't recognize cities as actors, but if you look in practice, cities do a lot. They're real agents for change. They develop their own food strategies. They have to see how they feed children in schools, so on and so forth. So this also, the dialogues, they provided an opportunity to actually reach out to cities and to learn from them, and we did it in a way that they also learned from each other what works, what wouldn't work. The results of these dialogues, they fed into the national pathway, which we provided to the UN. And the pathway is now also reflected in a strategy of the federal government for the future orientation of the agriculture policy in Switzerland that was actually adopted last year. And this year, the federal parliament welcomed that strategy and mandated the executive branch to develop a dispatch by 2027 that embraces actually a food systems approach. So now let me turn to maybe the challenge. We continued the dialogues post-summit. So last year we thought a food systems transformation is indeed a whole of society endeavor. We wanted to listen what the consumer, the population, think the future food system should look like. So we established a temporary citizens' assembly to come forward with recommendations to policymakers and to the stakeholders what should change. We assembled a group of 90 randomly selected people with the task within 5 months to come forward with recommendations, which they did. They formulated over 120 recommendations. But during the assembly, during the time that the assembly was working, media and parliament actually challenged that assembly itself. They claimed this would be a shadow parliament, and it's normally the federal parliament deciding things. And they also mentioned that in Switzerland, we citizens have so many direct democratic means to influence and participate in policy making and decision making that an assembly on a specific subject would not be necessary. So we had to spend quite a lot of time to tell the media and parliament that this assembly wasn't a decision-making body, but just formulating recommendations, providing information for decision-making on the future of the food system. We also had to say, if we have referenda in Switzerland where the population can reject an adopted federal law and say, no, we don't agree with that, so this won't enter into force. We can have to agree to changes in the constitution. But these referenda, it's always about yes or no. And we did something different in the assembly. We actually took people not very well informed about food systems. They had to inform themselves. They had to learn over a period of 5 months and then actually formulate what they wanted to see, what kind of change they wanted to see. So I think this is quite something different, and it was valuable to do that. So the situation calmed down. We can now take these 120 recommendations and work them into the dispatch we are preparing for Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin. Another example of courage, another example of working inside the political space, but at the same time having to be sometimes careful because people try to shut you down. And often when I'm asked by people, is it easier in the high-income countries, I say, my friend, the convener from Switzerland, he said he had some sleepless nights over his Citizens' Assembly. Thank you very much, Alvin, also for sharing it like it is. Now, I invite some 2-minute comments from people who are here, and I really would like you to all the time focus on, on looking ahead and build on what you heard from the panel. So Florence is helping me, and our first speaker is Flavien Joubert from Seychelles. And where are you, Flavien? Oui, vous êtes là? So, I mean, I heard your story yesterday. Please share it with everybody here. Thank you very much indeed. I will stop you after just over 2 minutes. Merci.
Okay. All right. Thank you, David, and good morning, everyone. Well, the story that we have is that the impact of the food system dialogues was quite positive for Seychelles. It came at a time when we were re-strategizing the agricultural sector and also putting in place certain measures that had been introduced by the new government that came in 2020. We did about 12 different discussion sessions with stakeholders, producers, and also people who are involved in retail and transformation, and also in the tourism industry. And I would say that we ended up with a very good plan that we were able to present to Parliament last year. Right now, what we are doing is looking at the key entry points for action under that plan. We are targeting certain transformative actions within the sector that would actually cause a change in local crop production, in livestock production, and also transformation of products for the market. So for us, it is a process that has resonated well with where we were as a country. And we're hoping that through this current ongoing process and interaction with other conveners and also with the entities associated with the UNFSS, we can rapidly pick up speed and cause some significant change to the food system at a local level. What we're aiming for is for more local produce to be integrated into the local industries, such as tourism. But we still have a lot of challenges, and I'll just go through the list of challenges that we have identified and that we like to deal with as we move forward. One is the impact of imports and competition, which is still a big challenge for us as an island, where we have a lot of products coming from outside that is replacing what is being produced internally and making internal production not competitive. We have the issue of access to finance by those who want to invest in the sector, and this is something that we're trying to resolve with finance and also talking to other financial institutions. There is the issue of marketing infrastructure and also infrastructure necessary for value chain enhancements, which is one of the major thrusts of our investment plan that we are developing under the roadmap. And also climate readiness of our production systems, which for us is very important. We are in an equatorial zone, and we do have a lot of impact from climate, and it's important that we prepare the productive sector in the country for what climate change would throw at us. And finally, knowledge base of people who are practicing and also transforming agri-produce in the country, which we think should be enhanced, and we hope to do that with the collaboration of partners and also with other conveners whom we might talk to as we move forward in this process. So we are very satisfied with what the impact has been, and we hope that we'll be able to engage further with partners and also with other conveners, like we've started in the past few days, and we'll move forward at a faster pace.
Thank you very much indeed. Everybody, can I just invite you to really appreciate the remarks from people when they have made them, and also invite people who are making remarks to please try to keep within 2 minutes now, because we have 38 people who would like to speak. and there is a really very limited amount of time. This is always the case with the exciting subject. Sorry for that. So let's go to Nepal. Mr. Raut, I can't see where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Namaste. You have the floor.
Namaste.
2 minutes.
Thank you, David. Distinguished panelists, excellencies, and distinguished national conveners. I am very pleased to briefly share how food systems transformation agenda is moving ahead in Nepal. Realizing the role of equitable, resilient, and sustainable food system to address food insecurity and malnutrition and accelerate the progress on SDGs, Government of Nepal have been actively engaged in UN Food System Summit since 2021 and developed the National Pathways and Food System Transformation Strategic Plan for the period of 2022 to 2030, linking with the 2030 agenda. Government of Nepal has included food system transformation pathways actions in the annual planning and budget guidelines for relevant ministries. Further, it has facilitated all the provincial governments to integrate food systems action in their annual planning. We are also planning to integrate the food system transformation actions in our upcoming 16th periodic national plan. This has paved a bold step to develop capacity of stakeholders at sub-national level to localize food system transformation action. In addition, NPC has started the process of piloting the localization of food system action at municipality level. Thereby, I thank Food System Coordination Hub for providing the startup fund to initiate this. This has become an encouragement for us rather than the amount. This pilot exercise will develop a food system localization framework which will be scaled up to the other municipalities. The Food System Steering Committee established under my leadership has been coordinating and leading the process, organizing interaction and meeting with stakeholders to organize awareness, develop capacity, and advocate for implementing the food system action. We have prepared monitoring and evaluation framework to continuously monitor and evaluate whether the food system transformation process is moving in the right direction and provide evidence for stock taking every 2 years. Now I would like to share some strategic priority for next 2 years. Localization of food system action, scaling of success of piloting in the local levels, ensure all the levels of governments, development partners, and implementing agencies, plan and programs are linked and contribute to food system transformation strategic plan. Focus to coordinate and collaborate with development partners to raise the funds for addressing the funding gap for planned food system transformation activities. Establishing and strengthening the capacity of food security information centers as a part of implementing of Right to Food and Food Sovereignty Act to generate key evidence and data needed all tiers of government to plan and monitor progress. And finally, the Right to Food and Food Sovereignty Act will be basis for improving food governance and policy coherence in health, agriculture, food security, and nutrition. We will expedite the implementation of this act. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. So, Nepal lessons, very important, going subnational, very important catalytic finance, very important that the development partners have to be coordinated and to be alongside the government. So some very, very key messages in there. Thank you. I'd like now to go to Madagascar. Who's going to speak for Madagascar? Just checking. Minister, 2 minutes, s'il vous plaît. Merci.
Merci, cher David. En fait, je voudrais juste intervenir par rapport au rôle des coordinateurs donc du système alimentaire. Pour nous, en tout cas, l'expérience a montré que la concertation de manière participative et inclusive est très importante. Nous avons eu près de 188 acteurs engagés lors de la première concertation. Mais le coordinateur devrait, je pense, avoir l'avis de mes homologues sur ce point, assurer l'alignement donc du programme de la feuille de route du système alimentaire par rapport à la politique générale de l'État et aussi à l'UNFSS+2, qui est le cadre de collaboration entre les systèmes des Nations Unies et le gouvernement, étant donné que les gouvernements peuvent changer, avoir aussi des évolutions dans le cadre de cette politique générale de l'État et bien sûr ne pas oublier la liaison avec les ODD. Et certainement, il y a l'importance d'assurer une bonne synergie entre ces différents acteurs qui contribuent à la transformation des systèmes alimentaires et d'exploiter positivement les potentiels de chaque acteur parce que justement c'est chaque acteur, et il y en a plusieurs, tant au niveau du gouvernement qu'au niveau du secteur public, qu'au niveau de la société civile, des ONG, mais aussi, encore une fois, des agences des Nations Unies, exploiter positivement par rapport aux spécificités, aux moyens de différents acteurs pour parvenir à mettre en œuvre la feuille de route. Nous avons déjà une feuille de route depuis 2022. Et donc, en vue de la multiplicité des acteurs, c'est un rôle qui nécessite quand même une certaine, comme l'a dit l'un des intervenants tout à l'heure, appropriation au niveau tant national, mais il y a aussi un point important que je voulais souligner, partager, c'est l'importance de la décentralisation dans la mise en œuvre de la feuille de route. Parce que cette appropriation doit être non seulement au niveau national, mais surtout et aussi au niveau régional. Et dans un pays comme Madagascar, qui est très vaste, avec 24 régions, il n'est pas évident d'arriver à cette appropriation. L'importance de la formation des cadres ministériels dans les différents départements, au niveau des différentes régions, sur le manuel d'un système alimentaire aussi est important. Donc, nous voyons là l'importance de mettre en place différents outils pour arriver à mettre en œuvre de manière efficace la feuille de route. Merci, David.
Oh, brilliant. Could I just say, you heard before Nepal used the right to food as the starting point. In Madagascar, what we're hearing is that they had to get alignment in many different areas. Alignment, of course, with national policy, but also UN country framework, and then getting synergy among stakeholders. We call it the ecosystem of support. Public sector, private sector, civil society, and trying to keep everybody in line, and then to decentralize a complex country. So thank you again for demonstrating all the different levels that have to be working together. Of course, I am getting myself into a muddle. Thank you. So we'd like now to hear from Palau, please. Palau. Who's going to speak for Palau? Palau.
Right here.
Hello, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, David. Stephen Victor, Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Environment from Palau. I'll focus on, for the interest of time, on what we've done since our food systems dialogue. Palau is a country that imports over 80% of its food. This systems dialogue was quite timely given that it happened during the impact of COVID-19 that show how important local food production, particularly from smallholders, in providing for food security in Palau. Following the dialogue, we had focused on analytics assessment. We've completed our fisheries assessment and agriculture assessment that has helped us develop two key priority documents that helps us to achieve food security. One is our Blue Prosperity Plan, which aims at developing our domestic pelagic fisheries. Prior to 2020, 90% of tuna that were caught in Palau's exclusive economic zones were exported out of Palau, only leaving 10% that will contribute to our food security. So we're trying to change that by investing in local companies that will ensure much of that fish can remain in our local markets to help support our food security. We're also developing our aquaculture sector to help reduce pressure on our declining reef fisheries. And then we've developed our Palau Green Growth Plan, which aims to triple agriculture production by 2030. And so the next step is really how do we bring in the resources and investment to help Palau implement these key priorities that ensures that we're moving toward achieving food security, food resilience as we combat the impact of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Everybody, the small island nations are actually some of the biggest nations in the world because they have this huge sea area and they are struggling. And we learnt that throughout the whole Food System Summit process. Stephen, thank you for coming and telling us about the tenacity that you've needed to show as you take this work forward. We really do salute you. Nigeria has featured very strongly in this stocktake moment. We've had Vice President here and more. And it's with great pleasure that we invite the convener, Dr. Fanaran, to give us his lessons looking ahead. 2 minutes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. I don't want to repeat what I've said in the course of our FECHA meetings, but at least Nigeria came up with priority or recommendations that will transform food system in Nigeria since 2021, and we commenced implementation with immediate effects with 3 distinct programs in 2022, and those 3 programs were actually evaluated before we came for this stock taking, and the report of it was generated and sent to the hub. Currently, the government of Nigeria is using the food system transformation pathways to declare emergency on food, nutrition, and water. So we are using the pathway, and that is why you can see our Vice President coming here to exhibit what we are doing in terms of innovative financing for food system. And we also set up a national steering committee that comprises of all the 36 states on geopolitical zonal basis. As I said, we decentralize the coordination by making by working with the zones, the 6 geopolitical zones that cover the entire 36 states. So all the states in Nigeria today, call any Minister of Economic Planning or Agric and ask them about food system. They are adequately informed, and they are actually working or implementing. And we also have a nutrition policy, which has a council that is chaired by the Vice President, and that is one of the channels that we are using to make sure that we deliver on the implementation. Then we have also we are having strong collaboration with all stakeholders, including the private sector. In fact, we are encouraging the private sector to drive the implementation, because that's the only area where we can achieve the objective, or the national objective of transforming our food. They are key, and that's why when we said that we are encouraging the establishment of farm estates in all the states in all the 36 states, we want the private sector to be the players there. And we also encourage the school garden, where our students are giving the orientation on farming. So everybody is now, the subnational food dashboard was also developed for innovation purposes and tracking implementation. We have a subnational dashboard that is now developed. Then finally, we have commenced, we are almost concluding the implementation strategy for the entire 78 priority actions that will enable all the states of Federation to go the same way. We are calling it National Implementation Strategy. And with that, let me stop.
Thank you, Dr. Fanaran. The pathway in Nigeria has become a vital, vital means for the decentralization of food systems thought and action. Different channels are being used, and the private sector collaborations are being built. It's kind of a remarkable story, and it shows how pathways can be so valuable. Algeria, who would like to speak from Algeria? You have the floor, sir. Please, if you can keep it to 2 minutes, c'est bon. Merci.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, chers collègues nationaux Convenors, honorable assistance, bonjour. Qu'il me soit permis tout d'abord de remercier tous ceux qui ont participé et contribué à l'organisation de ce grand cet important événement planétaire qui est le premier bilan de transformation du système alimentaire. À ce propos, je voudrais adresser mes sincères remerciements aux hubs de coordination ainsi qu'à leurs partenaires pour leur effort soutenu, leur assistance continue et leur disponibilité ininterrompue pour accompagner ce processus de transformation durable du système alimentaire, enclenché il y a plus de 2 années. Notre présence aujourd'hui dans cette salle en est la parfaite consécration du grand travail de coordination, de coaching et de facilitation affiché par le Hub, ce qui a permis de fédérer une équipe d'experts multinationales et multidisciplinaires et qui a su maintenir à travers les différentes activités et réunions menées un rythme et une cadence de travail élevés malgré la conjoncture peu favorable marquée par la pandémie de Covid-19 et qui ont su stimuler les initiatives pays pour les phases de dialogue nationaux, de formulation des feuilles de route et celle de notre moment d'aujourd'hui, le premier bilan biennal. L'organisation du hub de coordination avec ses bureaux ici à Rome assurant la fonction de coordination ressourcée et financée par les différentes agences onusiennes qui interagissent avec l'écosystème formé par les partenaires, coalitions et autres parties prenantes s'appuie sur le National Convenors qui forme les plateformes au niveau pays. La résistance de cette architecture dépend en grande partie de la force et la robustesse de ces plateformes pays conduites par le National Convenors, auquel il faudra accorder une attention particulière, d'où votre choix judicieux de consacrer un dialogue aujourd'hui de leadership à ce propos. À ce propos, je voudrais partager avec vous quelques suggestions et pistes de réflexion pour le renforcement du rôle du National Convenors. En matière d'organisation, suggérer au gouvernement l'octroi d'un statut particulier au National Convenors et pérenniser sa fonction, et ce, dans un souci de capitalisation et de cumul des compétences à l'intérieur d'un pool qui sera en contact permanent avec les bureaux de coordination résidents du système des Nations Unies dans chaque pays. En matière d'appui, mettre en place un programme de renforcement des capacités techniques et managériales spécialement conçu pour l'accélération de la transformation des systèmes alimentaires. En matière de moyens et de ressources, suggérer la formation d'un groupe de travail formé par l'équipe de National Convenors, le bureau de coordinateur résident des Nations Unies, la FAO et le hub de coordination. Ceux-ci auront pour mission la définition des moyens et ressources nécessaires pour la conduite des tâches attendues du National Convenors. En matière de vulgarisation et de dissémination des connaissances, maintenir les points de contact et les moments de partage conduits durant les 2 dernières années, tout en organisant des cycles de rencontres thématiques régionales et continentales sur les thèmes prioritaires qui sont déjà pourraient être exploités à travers les rapports volontaires soumis par les pays. Ceci permettra une dissémination et un gain précieux en efficacité à travers la promotion des dialogues entre les différentes parties prenantes. Enfin, je voudrais réaffirmer notre plein engagement à fournir les efforts nécessaires pour la réussite des actions et accomplissement des objectifs contenus dans notre feuille de route nationale pour l'accélération de la transformation des systèmes alimentaires et participer ainsi à l'effort de nous tous pour construire un avenir meilleur et prospère pour notre planète et nos générations futures. L'homme mène une guerre contre la nature. S'il gagne, il est perdu. Robert Reeves. Merci pour votre attention.
Merci beaucoup, Mohamed. So I want to talk to the interpreters. I'm sorry, I'm rushing people, and they talk fast, and it must create some tricky times. But again, it's important that you said what you had to say. It was beautiful. I want to stress what Mohamed said about the status of conveners. He made a point there, and we need to hold that one. He made a point about the need for a support program to help the conveners with their work, and he described the absolute need for strong coordination platforms and then a working group to perhaps build these things up. Very, very valuable suggestions. We're now going to really eastwards a long way to the Lao PDR to hear from convener Pomi Indechak. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and Sabadi. My name is Pomi Indechak, so I'm from Lao PDR, the only convener so far. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you in this very important moment. So for Lao PDR, we are doing well in terms of proceeding on the food system in Lao PDR to date. I have to say that we are very lucky with the support with the UN network agencies, especially particularly we have FAO, our direct counterpart, that we have managed to develop our pathway, which is already shared with you. And with that, we have 4 tracks that involve different sector and also development partners in order to develop further and also to implement. And we have many dialogues, and lately we have drafting our action plan for food system in Laopedia, and we hope to get presented and approved by the government by the end of this year or early next year. And in this regard also, I join hand with other conveners that already give the comments, and some additional comments that I would like to share with you is that I think the first one, it is important to build the capacity. I'm sure that some convener already mentioned, but capacity of the national secretariat, you know, as I already mentioned earlier, that I'm only convener for Laopedia, so I think most of us need the national secretariat to support the national conveners to carry out our tasks. As food system work is the challenging, complex task, I think. And the second one, I think we need to get another ministries on board to support our work of national conveners to put the food system agenda on the national development planning, budgeting, and also coordination process. So far, and we are lucky enough that this meeting, I also managed to get approval to get the high-ranking staff from Ministry of Planning and Investment, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Ministry of Finance to accompany to this important meeting that we hope to push forward. And the last one is I think communication tools and materials based on national context are very important also for the national conveners to highlight the importance of the food system around the various stakeholders in the countries. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. This is the words of a convener who's had to struggle a bit, and he's saying he needs some help with capacity for his own secretariat. He also needs help to encourage other ministers to come on board, and that means communication materials that can be applied in the local context. Very, very practical suggestions. Now, where are you, Ibrahima? There you are. So now we're going to hear from convener of Senegal, Dr. Ibrahima Mendy. You have the floor. Look ahead.
Merci David, bonjour tout le monde. Je suis Dr Ibrahim Mendy, je suis le directeur de l'analyse, de la prévision et des statistiques agricoles au ministère de l'Agriculture et de l'Équipement rural du Sénégal. Je suis le coordonnateur des systèmes alimentaires. J'ai donc accompagné l'équipe qui a pu formuler la position du Sénégal. Et le Sénégal fait partie des pays qui ont eu leur position bien avant le pré-sommet. Je ne vais pas parler du processus. Moi, je regarde l'avant. Ce qui est important pour moi, c'est l'opérationnalisation de la feuille de route. On a souvent l'habitude de formuler des documents très intéressants, mais le vrai problème, c'est l'opérationnalisation. Et pour ça, je vais donner quelques pistes. Moi, je pense que l'appui technique et financier des Nations Unies à travers le HUB doit continuer pour les pays. Il faut que ces feuilles de route soient transformées en projets bancables. Ça facilite le financement. Parce que pour moi, ça va me permettre, moi, au Sénégal, par exemple, ces projets, de pouvoir les inscrire dans le document de planification budgétaire du Sénégal, le PTIP, par exemple. Donc, ça pourrait être financé à travers le budget national, mais aussi ça pourrait être financé par les partenaires techniques et financiers. Ça, c'est important pour moi et ça pourra régler la question de l'instabilité institutionnelle, parce que ça aussi c'est un défi. On a formulé le document avec un ministre. Tout juste après, le ministre a été remplacé. Le nouveau ministre qui vient, Excellence, excusez-moi, le nouveau ministre qui arrive, peut-être lui, il peut voir autre chose qui est différent de ce que vous avez fait. Mais si c'est traduit en termes de projet inscrit dans les documents de planification budgétaire, financé déjà par des partenaires, je pense que le ministre qui arrive ne pourra rien changer et on pourra effectivement traduire ce qu'on a inscrit dans la feuille de route en termes de, et ça pourrait contribuer à la transformation des systèmes alimentaires. Les comités de coordination, c'est vrai que ça vient de un peu partout. Je pense qu'il faut encore l'appui technique aussi pour permettre à cette coordination, parce que s'il n'y a pas de coordination, le document, la feuille de route étant multisectorielle, effectivement, il y aura des problèmes. Il y a plusieurs acteurs. C'est un défi. Nous allons continuer dans cette transformation des systèmes alimentaires au Sénégal et en Afrique de l'Ouest. Mais j'ai oublié un point. Une fois qu'on a fini effectivement de traduire ces feuilles de route en termes de projet, pourquoi ne pas organiser un business meeting avec les investisseurs, les financiers? Ça pourrait se faire par région. Par exemple, la région de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, la région du centre, on a les serres. Ça peut être à travers les serres qu'on organise ces business meetings pour que chaque pays présente sa feuille de route, présente ses projets. Et voilà, je pense que ça pourrait très bien faire avancer les choses. Mais si on s'arrête là, on est avec les feuilles de route qu'on a, je crains bien que 2 ans après, pour certains pays, on ne pourra pas avoir d'avancée parce qu'il n'y a pas de visibilité. Voilà ce que je voulais dire. Merci.
No, thank you. That's a very, very practical suggestion, and it's one that seems to be coming through more and more often. It's really hard if you're convener, if you can't get the financial support from outside as well as inside, coordinated around the food systems approach. So coordination and financing become vital. Everybody, we're not going to have time to let all those people speak who want to speak. It's just like that sometimes. We're in a terribly popular session, and we have to leave this room at 12:30. Plus, we need to be fair to our interpreters and supporters. We will do as best we can. Please keep your interventions short. And then Sylvia says, please write to me, these are her words, with your recommendations. Please open the communication with Sylvia. She'd like it. She's very apologetic that we just can't hear from everybody. Let's quickly go to Cornelia Burns, who's been with us right from the beginning, from Germany, as the convener. A short looking forward moment from you, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the possibility to speak. I want to pick up on something what was said by the panel, which is a point of coordination. When I pick up my job as national convener, I was mainly looking at the international level, and it was very difficult for me to bring in the people caring about sustainable development for Germany, for the internal policies. But it worked out, so we had more or less to overcome and integrate existing structures built on our program for sustainable development we had in Germany, and go on looking forward for the transformation of food systems. And it worked out quite well. And I think if you want to really coordinate, it is good that we have it on a really high level in Germany. So the coordination of sustainable development is done by the Chancellery. So all the existing ministries can be integrated in this process. But the UN Food Systems Summit gave us the opportunity to start a national dialogue to bring in all the stakeholders, and now we are integrating all their recommendations in our national policies. We have a process to bring in youth as well, because also here in this surrounding we recognize that we need to give more voice, stronger voice to the youth. We have some central objective for Germany, which is in addition of sustainable development, we are reaching out to get a higher percentage of organic farming in Germany and improve the climate footprint of the agriculture food sector, conversion of livestock farming, and promoting a plant-based diet for our consumers and promotion of biodiversity. These are the main, I think, the main tasks for us. We need to go on with a whole government approach if we want to reach our goals. Thank you very much.
Everybody, the German story is so important to harmonize and get coherence between external assistance and internal practice has been a real objective and beautifully done. The high-level coordination critical, and we really are delighted that Germany took these steps. And in a time that wasn't politically easy when it started. Let's move now to hear from Minister Janine Cooper from Monrovia in Liberia. Looking forward, Janine, and I'd like it to be 2 minutes or so.
Thank you very much, David. Before I start, I would like to recognize that today marks the 176th independence anniversary of Liberia. And so it's a mark of our interest and passion for the UN food systems, or for the food systems transformation that we are here today. In the interest of time, I won't go into details, but what I will say is that the day after the Food System Summit for us was the day after the Food System Summit. So we jumped right into implementing rather than more dialogues and planning and discussions. We incorporated the Food Systems Convenor's Office within my office and aligned food systems transformation with our ongoing programs. So we've been doing some very exciting things with women's empowerment. We've established a Center for Agriculture and Climate that's looking at the nexus of women, food security, and climate. And so many others. The UN has 3 flagship projects that are under development now to support the food systems pathways. However, what I want to speak about just very briefly is that for Liberia, we found that we had the financial resources available, but the technical assistance that would help us to navigate new and innovative thinking in food systems transformation, that has been lagging far behind the resources, especially coming from our traditional partners in the UN and our bilateral, multilateral partners. We're still refining old ways of doing things, and we're facing new realities all the time. Also been challenging to get, because a lot of our financing comes from bilateral, multilateral sources, to finance the innovation and the innovative thinking programs that we have. But we're taking strides, we're out there doing, and we look forward to more discussions such as this and stock taking with others so we can see where we are as we go forward. Thank you.
Janine and team jumped right in. Convener brought into the center, bringing women right to the heart of the program, agriculture and climate together, calling on the UN to update, not business as usual, but recognize this is new ways of working, new realities. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to go now to Dr. Inaya Ezzedine, Member of Parliament from Lebanon and National Convener. Looking ahead, 2 minutes, please. Thank you
very much. recently I was appointed the national convener for the last 2 months, and we have prepared an expanded outline for the national pathway. But I would like to explain how we got our entry to the food system transformation may be unique or different than other countries. It dates back to the year 2020, when after the multiple crises that Lebanon is going through, I decided as a parliamentarian officially elected that it's my duty to jump to the front line and see where this lack of resilience and unsustainability is coming from. And this is why I went through an extensive mapping of our legal legislative framework through the lens of SDG 2 and sustainability. And this way, we could map the laws that regulate every pillar of the 6 pillars of food security, and we could see very clearly how the fragmentation and the silo approach to the work affected our resilience and sustainability. And we, since then, started working on how we can articulate all the problems. Access to food, to sustainable access to healthy food in an equitable, resilient way is a human right. But this is a human right that cannot be secured by one law. This is a human right that is present in different sectors, and the implementation of this, or provision of this right or these rights is the responsibility of the whole of society and a whole of government. This is why it's very important to create the legislative ecosystem and the infrastructure, this institutional infrastructure that will bring all the sectors together, all the society together in a well-coordinated, balanced relationship and coordination with a structure of accountability and responsibility, and trying to find together the right finances for this. It's very important for us to adopt this system thinking. Human access, sustainable access to food in an equitable way is not only in agriculture, it's in many sectors. It's not food security alone. Food security is one of the outcomes of the food system, and promoting food system thinking in food-related issues is a promotion of the whole SDG agenda, and we will be working towards the implementation of this approach to food system transformation.
Remember those words from Dr. Inaya Ezzedine. She came into it by studying the legal basis. She's used her analysis of the laws and her position as Member of Parliament to create a mechanism that could not just be applied to food, but applied right across the SDGs. Thank you very much indeed. Where's Dr. Rui Redaura from Mexico, convener? Rui, try to keep it to a couple of minutes. Tell us the really key points. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. Rui López Ridaura, de México, de la Secretaría de Salud. Voy a hablar en español. Y más que compartir experiencias de lo que hemos hecho, que ha sido mucho, y agradezco mucho a toda esta red de convocantes nacionales impulsadas por el Hub y por ustedes. Me gustaría más bien hacer un llamado, una petición, un llamado de auxilio también a estas agencias internacionales y al foro especialmente, para que nos ayuden a los países a blindar las políticas públicas del conflicto de interés. Creo que uno de los grandes retos que tenemos, al menos en México seguro, en la región también seguro, pero gran parte del planeta, es la enorme y creciente epidemia de obesidad y enfermedades crónicas, donde un componente muy importante son los alimentos ultraprocesados. Los alimentos ultraprocesados se han convertido en una parte importante de la dieta de menores de edad, de diferentes edades, de niveles socioeconómicos, rurales, urbanos, en todo el planeta, y tenemos que tener herramientas para detener esta creciente disponibilidad de alimentos ultraprocesados. En México hemos podido avanzar en legislación para eliminar grasas trans, para adherirnos efectivamente al Código Internacional del Mercadeo de Sucedáneos de Leche Materna, para tener un estricto control de la publicidad dirigida a niñas y niños. Sin embargo, en cada una de estas batallas, todas ellas llegamos a la Suprema Corte de Justicia, donde las mismas empresas transnacionales de la industria de alimentos están bloqueando constantemente el progreso de la política. Es por eso que creo que en este tipo de foros lo que tenemos que impulsar es un marco regulatorio para detener al sector privado, especialmente en la industria alimentaria de alimentos ultraprocesados, que no solamente están impactando en la salud, sino también tienen un enorme impacto en el sistema alimentario, en el sistema de producción, con un enorme impacto en la salud del planeta, también con desplazamiento importante de poblaciones en sus tierras y en sus formas de producción. Es por eso que hago un llamado para que también en este foro se discute este componente. Creo que el sector privado tiene que detener este embate que estamos teniendo en los países y que como comunidad internacional nos fortalezcamos para que la política pública esté blindada de este conflicto de interés que es inaceptable y que tenemos que detenerlo lo antes posible. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Everybody, there are not many conveners who come from public health, but given the enormity of the obesity challenge in Mexico, it's really brilliant that Rui is there, but it's been a struggle. Thank you for your constant tenacity. Our last speaker in this session is going to be Randan Jack, who comes from the Marshall Islands. And if you could just look ahead and say what the last 2 years have taught you, that would be great. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Being a small island nation, I must say that one of the greatest achievements for the Marshall Islands is in terms of food systems transformation, is the conduction of the national food systems dialogues, which address the challenges in our food systems as well as coming up with game-changing solutions. I would like to point out that the national pathway document for the country is actually still in draft and is yet to be endorsed by our cabinet. Reason being that we, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Commerce, overseeing food systems, believe that it is critical that the sources are identified in order to implement our pathway. However, the themes, priorities, and objectives of the pathway are solely derived from our existing national plans, which already have projects and activities to transform our food systems, such as building communities' capacity in climate-smart agriculture, training on basic horticulture and livestock management and production for youth and women groups, distribution of seeds and seedlings, bringing in projects from donor agencies, addressing the building of resilience in food and water, security, nutrition, and health and in communities and schools. All of these activities, however, rely on donor countries, partners, and agencies because like many other countries, our government's general funds are never enough to meet our goals. And one thing our country needs to work on is establishing a steering committee on food systems, which is one of the key concepts in our pathways. And as it should be, our pathway is a living document, and there is still room for improvement and really capture the many, many challenges we face. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
It's been really tough for some of the Pacific Island nations to get collective action around pathways. And it's been extraordinary that people like Randan and the other brilliant conveners from the Pacific who are in this room have demonstrated amazing tenacity. I've just spoken to Sylvia, and I have to say to the panel that this has been so rich, and we've got so much, and it is bubbling in our heads, but we have to stop. And so what we're going to do is to invite all the conveners to come up with the panelists to have a picture taken. We want to thank our interpreters for sheer brilliance and for tolerance. We want to thank the many people in this room who've been working so hard, who have not been able to speak. And I'm really sorry about that. I feel responsible. And please write to Sylvia. and have a lovely break, lunch, or whatever else you're going to do, and keep chugling on. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't bring you back. Everybody wants to talk. It's just so difficult. Please come up here on the dais and behind or in front.
I have my flag there.